Good morning, my brother Noan. I just read your post on the on my YouTube's thread on the God Zone, and I can appreciate your sentiment and your thoughts. I really do. And I'm trying my best not to have this wall between you and I, and I'm trying not to let myself intercede for me in this reply. You say a few interesting things in there, but I'll get straight to the numbers 1 through 6. Let's see. You say, so we each have different viewpoints, and there is no other way to say it than straight out and factual. And then you have these 1 through 6 things listed. And you also mentioned that you give me questions and things that I don't answer, or something thereabout. So I mean, I guess one thing I can do is try to answer your questions one at a time. So if you have something that you want to question me on that maybe can bring me around to something that I'm not seeing or don't understand, feel free to give them to me one at a time. Because I don't mind saying I'm kind of lost in this whole thread and all these emotions and all these. So if you have something that you want me to answer me one question one at a time, and we'll methodically kind to address it. Number one, you don't doubt my viewpoint, and you are content to keep your viewpoint. Let me try to answer that. Viewpoints are like the dirty underwear you show in your little cartoon down below that of Adam's eating Eve's dirty underwear, which was a leaf. They change all the time. Now, most people in Christianity will see that and they're quick to say, oh, you're the weed in the wind that blows this direction, that direction. You don't have any, what would be the word, standing power. But I present to you that, viewpoints, as long as you're seeking God, are meant to change. Simply because we're put here not knowing anything. Where our memory is basically stripped away for our own good. We're basically in a position where we have to figure stuff out as we go. So it's not that I am content. Content to keep your viewpoint. It's not that I'm content to keep my viewpoint. I'm ever changing my viewpoint. My mind is ever open to suggestions of where I should go with my thought process, which is, is exactly how I feel about the Bible now. Is due to change. Sure, I can try to hold up the Bible as a God, and say this is my God, and then I can put that Bible just like any other image between me and God. And sure, God has a word. God has told us through His word to help us. Do I know for sure that man hasn't mucked up that word of God? Do I know for sure that we weren't attacked? And by the way, the only time I really talk, I'll say, against the King James Version is pretty much in these types of conversations. I mean, very few is the time that I'm actually reading the King James Version do I come across something that I have to say, now should I take that at face value, or should I read further on and let the absorb, try to come to a conclusion? Because I mean that's how it is. It's not like Blaine's going through the book and can't wait to look to find a little piece that don't make sense so I can frame it and showcase it and show the world. You don't confuse me with one of those people who try to tear down the King James Version. I don't. I simply try to tear down people looking at the King James Version as God itself or His self. I don't believe that's the case. I believe God has a word, and I believe all men have parts, broken bits and pieces and parts of the Word of God. And I don't think any man has all of the Word of God, including King James, or the people that put together that work for him or his administration. Number two, I know that your viewpoint is wrong. based on conclusion of evidence of both. I guess I can understand that. We all know things, we all feel things, which is the same exact reason that I take the standpoint that I do. As far as knowing I'm wrong, unless you're an angel or a messenger from God with impeccable discernment, and even if you may be an angel or discernment from God, there's even evidence that angels from God are not always right. Let's say that you feel that way now, you know that now. Well, 2 or 3 years down the road, you may know something different, because God is a living thing. Therefore, as we're on this track trying to catch up to where He is, we are constantly ever changing, whether we want to admit that or not. What you think this year is not what you thought last year, unless you know something that I don't. And I'm willing to accept the fact that you may, and I keep my mind as open to your thoughts and what you're saying, as well as I do to the thoughts and emotions and feelings that I've taken in to get me to the viewpoint to not to look at the King James Version as the Word of God as a whole. Not to empower that man or that system of men to look upon them and say, oh, you've got the Word of God, I was looking over here, so I better look over here at your satchel and I'll do everything that you say. Because, bro, people are doing that all over the world, and they're still screwed up. So there must be a missing element. There must be something other than just reading this King James Version. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm feeling. Okay, number 3, I understand your viewpoint, as I have seen the evidence of both. I can appreciate you've probably been studying before me. You've probably been studying stuff that I'm looking at now, and you've probably treaded those waters before I have. I can appreciate that. Does that mean that you've seen everything that there is to see on this issue? Probably not. Does it mean that your conclusion is every man's conclusion? Probably not. Does it mean your conclusion is mine? Probably not. So I take that at face value, and given what I just said about it, and leave that there. You do not understand my viewpoint, as you are content with your viewpoint and show no desire for evidence. The Word of God, the very one we're questioning, and other books as well, God lets us know that there's this great deceivement coming. There's great deception, and I take that seriously. And now, the first thought you just had in your mind was, I'm saying that you are part of the deceive thing that's coming to deceive me. But when actually the thought that was coming through my mind when I said that is that maybe King James or his team may very well have been part of that deception. Does God give us a timepiece saying that the deception is going to be 100 years before the end of the world, 10 years before the end of the world, 6 months before the end of the world? I don't really buy into all those times, because like everything else, there's different equations for that. Like the generation of Israel becoming a nation. Well, what can be a generation? Well, hell, it can be 20 years, it can be 70 years, it can be 120 years. Why not just one? Why is there 3 descriptions of generations in this Bible? So that's what I'm trying to make in my point. Why is there a list of 3 different times in what a generation can represent? Wouldn't one have been better? Where did the unclarity come from? Where did the confusion come from? Did it come from God's mouth? I doubt that. Did it come from maybe somebody's interpretations, or somebody's emotions and feelings getting involved as they were transpiring or transliterating what the Word of God might have meant to put it down in a book version? That's most likely going to be the case. When it said, when we were actually talking about comes down within that generation, why didn't the writers of the book give us one of the 3 generations so we'd know which one he's talking about? Those types of things. Why are we kind of always left to our self-thought to figure out and make a choice on our own with no real clear stance on many things? And because I've come to the conclusion that that's what this whole thing is about. Coming to our own conclusion, us making the choice. Because God's trying to find out where our heart is, not where our knowledge is, not how smart we are, but He wants to know what we're made of. Okay, I guess I'm going on to 5. I see many dangers in your viewpoint to yourself, others, and I see it as an affront to God and His Word. I don't really know what to say to that other than God's been seeing us as being an affront to God since the day we were born. That's why we're here, facing death, trying to be removed from this process of death and this agony, whether we know it or not, we live in this world. Some of our friends and family die before us, and we go through that. We have alcoholism, we have addictions, we have misconceptions, we have all this long drudgery thing, all for doing one thing, and that's to hone us into something that is worthy to God. He didn't put us here in a state of not being an affront to His Word. We are against His Word from the moment we come out of the womb, because we're looking at the needs of self. So, that being said, I don't really know what the purpose of that comment was. If it's maybe a little bit of a scare tactic or something like that, or maybe you were just trying to warn me out of the love of your heart. I can see you doing both, frankly. So I'm not really sure what the purpose of that, but I don't feel that I'm an affront to God. I feel that as long as I'm willing to keep an open mind and learn what God sends me, I feel like I'm on the path. Whether I may be a dirty piece of shit right now may not be what I'll be tomorrow, because I am willing to change, and I am willing to look like that weed in the wind blowing both ways. I am willing to accept what comes my way, and I do have a lot of faith in God that what is good for me is going to stick to me, and what is not good for me won't. Okay, 6, you say, I do not see any motivating possibility of danger, or consider it an affront to God to see any conversation of it as negative. Let's see what that says. You do not see any motivating possibility of danger. In other words, you're saying I don't see it as being dangerous. And I think I just answered that on 5. Or consider it an affront to God. I don't consider it an affront to God, because I think God sees us all as naked, and God sees us all as trying, and God sees us all as that dirty little boy you just did in your story below that. An affront to God and see any conversation as negative. Okay, as far as me discussing what I think about the King James Version, do I see it as negative? No, I don't. I think the first thing with finding out anything is a question. And I think a question is fair. And I think we can see the larger things by looking at the little things. We can see how the world works by looking at the anthill. We can see how we work, or how God works in the whole system, by looking at us. We can see our basic need and design. When I say by looking at us, we can see God. Let's use us as the father and think about our children. Don't you want your kid to ask you why he shouldn't touch the stove? Do you want to just say, because I said so? Or do you want to say, because son, sometimes this thing is hot, sometimes after I turn the stove off, that burner's going to stay hot for 15-20 minutes. You come up there reaching for something, thinking there's something good up there, you grab the burner and bam, you got your fingers burnt. Now you may lose a finger or something because you burnt your finger so bad. Don't you want the opportunity to explain this to that kid in a manner of a way that he's going to understand it and perceive it, and perhaps maybe learn this lesson without having to actually burn his fingers? So I think we can see the method of how we're supposed to behave and act in this walk, which is basically a search for God, through looking at smaller things, the very things that we do. We can look at our own relationships between man and woman, and we can learn almost everything there is to learn between the relationships between mankind and God. because we can look at a small thing, we can see because there's things that runs through both of these things that are exactly the same. Because nature has a kind of a resounding thread that runs through it, a building block that's the same everywhere you go, kind of like how a molecule works in properties. So I don't think that it's dangerous to ask questions. I don't think it's dangerous to talk about the possibility of King James Version book not being upheld as the whole of God. I think that's dangerous to do with anything or anybody, because I don't think that the whole of God is in any King James Version that I've ever seen. So anyway, like I said, man, I'm not running around looking for loopholes, and picking on King James. There's much more to my studying and seeking God than that. It just happens to be the topic that we're talking about on this thread, and the one that Queenie and Chance or Queenie had dug into, and then brought so much attention to. So I really find it kind of hard to believe, man, that you yourself have trouble understanding, or well, okay, I'll take that back, because you just said up there that I'm not gonna try to consciously or unconsciously make it dig. I'll put it this: I'm kind of taken aback about the stance and the conversation and everything else concerning what we're talking about. Okay, so that being said, I hope this video lays the groundwork for some clarity. And if whatever questions you've asked me in the past, pick one out that you think I need to consider and ask for my good, and I will surely try to do that, most likely in video form. As I think a big part of the problem is a lot of stuff gets lost in the keys. Okay, bro. I hope this is kind of helps our situation here that we seem to be experiencing on the board. And I really do love and appreciate you, brother, as I do all the people that I talk to on the net and has taught things to me on the net. Don't think that I don't. I do love you and I do appreciate you. Okay, people of Earth, adios. Peace out.